Let's start, shall we, with just the current situation, which at the moment is this. When I made the decision to talk about this as the main focus of a stream, the Paramount bid to do a hostile takeover, which I will get to, that hadn't happened yet. I thought I was just going to be explaining to people why they needed to stop whining about Netflix. Because, forgive me this tangent, and I am slightly bitter about it, it was so infuriating for me over the weekend for when it was announced that Netflix had won the bid to buy Warner Brothers, to see all these people, these pundits, all these people be like, no, this is horrible, this is terrible, it's the death of cinemas. Freaking Writers Guild of America put out a statement. I hated seeing all of that, and here's why. First of all, let's make it real clear. Corporate consolidation is a terrible thing, especially at this scale. It should absolutely not be allowed to happen by anybody. But Warner Brothers was taking bids. Warner Brothers had signaled that it was for sale. Someone was going to buy it. Now, in a vacuum devoid of context, the idea of Netflix buying Warner Brothers, terrible. But the context of who else was bidding mattered. Just to address what I thought I was going to be talking about real quick, the thing with Netflix, like the main concern people seem to have was the idea that it would mean somehow the death of cinemas, which, I'm sorry, is hyperbolic as heck. Now, I could bring up how Ted Sarandos, the current CEO of Netflix, has said they do not have an intention of completely getting rid of Warner Brothers' theatrical release pipeline. That is something they are intending to add to what they do, not remove it and just have everything go to streaming. Of course, there isn't really a reason that we should trust him. We shouldn't trust any CEO, but that is what he said on the record. And honestly, it would make a lot of sense for them to basically buy an existing infrastructure to allow for theatrical release of big movies. What he has pledged, and I am inclined to believe him on, is that assuming Netflix still wins this, don't worry, we'll get to Paramount. Assuming Netflix still wins this, he is committed at the very least to releasing everything that has already been announced to release in theaters. So that means all the main DC movies, anything that's already been announced. So that's like the next probably 3, maybe 4 years worth of stuff. Still definitely going to hit theaters. After that, a little bit more of an open question. But the thing is, even if Netflix just had just straight up won this bid and Paramount weren't being dicks, again, I'll get to them, even if that had been the case, and Netflix had just won it straight out, and even if they said, we're not releasing any of these in theaters, it just goes to our streaming service, that still wouldn't mean the death of cinemas. No more than literally anyone else buying them. Would it mean consolidation? Yeah, absolutely, which is bad, to be clear. But cinemas are not going to go away. Individual locations of cinemas, yeah, maybe. The size of the thing might shrink. But cinemas will never go away for the exact same reason that bookstores have never gone away, for the exact same reason that physical media still sells when they actually release the damn stuff. Because it might become more niche, but it will not go away entirely, ever. So the idea of it's the death of cinema. And also, do you think the remaining studios won't try and take advantage of the fact that they have less competition in the theater space? So like the whole thing that everyone was freaking out about, that Netflix was going to buy Warner Brothers, I mean the death of cinema in theaters, was absurd. I'm not saying it would have no impact. I'm not that naive. But it was hyperbolic and infuriating. And I thought that was what I was going to be talking about. Instead, we're going to talk about the reason why I was relieved when Netflix was announced as the winner. Let's back up. There were 3 main parties bidding on Warner Brothers. Comcast never really seemed to have a serious shot at getting this. Pretty much from the early days, while they put in a bid, the conversation pretty much always seemed to be between Netflix and Skydance. I'm probably going to say Skydance and Paramount interchangeably. They are the same entity at this point. And when Netflix was announced to win it, I sighed the biggest sigh of relief. Oh, thank goodness. To go over the problems with Paramount and Skydance real quick, there's a lot. For one, Skydance just barely closed their merger with Paramount last year. Netflix has actually had a freeze on debt accumulation. They have gone out of their way to not accumulate new debt. This is like the first time Netflix has even tried to buy something else on this scale. That's not a thing they do. Skydance just bought Paramount and closed that deal and took ownership of it last year. And it's already a complete mess. A lot of this comes down to the people who own Skydance. David Ellison. The Ellisons in general, the main ones that are worth talking about are David and his father Larry. They are billionaires, they are right-wingers, and they are going way out of their way to ingratiate themselves with Trump. The main substantive way that they did that was to gut CBS News and put, what's her name, Barry Weiss? Put her in charge of that. And John Oliver did a real good breakdown on all the problems with her. If you need a primer on that, the idea that a company that just bought a massive media company last year would be allowed to buy another one is already horrifying. The Ellisons are very much on an anti-woke kick. I'm real sorry for anyone who is a fan of Star Trek, which Paramount owns. The future of that is going to be bleak as hell because they're all about the anti-DEI, anti-woke. How much of that is them currying favor with Trump versus things they believe sincerely? Doesn't matter. It's a distinction without a difference because their behavior is the same either way. So the idea of them taking hold of Warner Brothers, to me, was the nightmare scenario. So now they're trying to do a hostile takeover. This is not guaranteed to work. Now, David Ellison's father, Larry Ellison, has a good track record with hostile takeovers. He's done, I think, 4 of them. They were all successful. But those were also with what I would call middling but very overpriced tech companies, not particularly well-known things that the general public was aware of and had an eye on. So even Larry Ellison, who has a strong history with hostile takeovers, he hasn't done something on this scale. He's done things for a lot of money, but not this much and not with this well-known a property. So a hostile takeover is what happens when an offer to buy or merge with a company has been received and rejected by the board of that company. So in this case, the board at Warner's, which, yes, would include David Zaslav. Ugh. But the board has rejected the offer. Rather than accept the no, what a hostile takeover means is that the company that has been told no goes to the shareholders and offers to buy their shares, generally at an inflated price, to incentivize them to sell, in an attempt to get a majority share of the company. Basically, if they can get over 50% of the shares, that will give them the power to override the board's decision to tell them no. And then as the majority shareholder of the company that they want to buy, they can now force the sale to themselves. That's how a hostile takeover works. Now, there's a lot of ways to stall out or fight against a hostile takeover. Sometimes you can turn to regulators and call it, anti-business, anti-competition, etc. That probably won't be the case here. Just because it's under Trump's regime, it's so cutthroat. Also, the Ellisons are kind of in good with Trump. Again, I'm going to come back to that. It's not as clear-cut as people, the catastrophizers think it is, but that is a factor. I'm not going to say it isn't. But anyways, there is trying to get regulators to stop it. I doubt that's going to come into the mix. It seems to be the Skydance end that is much more interested in getting regulators to put their thumbs on the scale one way or the other. So that's probably not something Netflix can do. But there's a bunch of other things that they can do. There are things like what's called poison pill, which is to deliberately dilute the value of their stock and put more stock out there, basically making it harder and more expensive for the company attempting the hostile takeover to be able to buy up over 50% at all, and much more costly for them to try and do it. Netflix CEO, he has said that they kind of expected this. This did not catch them off guard, which, again, knowing Larry Ellison's history of doing these things, if Netflix knows his business at all, they did see this coming, and they probably did. Before I get to the next thing, let's actually talk about why Netflix won the bid. The big hangup that appears to have been an issue for the Warner Brothers board and David Zaslav in particular. Now, the exact reasons as to why this is their issue, there's some indication, but it's a little murky. But there was a lot of concern about how much foreign money was wrapped up in Skydance's offer, because Skydance's offer was not fully, but partially backed by multiple Middle Eastern companies, countries. The one that has people the most concerned is the Saudi royal family. That's not the only one. Chinese company Tencent was in the mix for a bit, though they aren't anymore, to be fair. But also Jared Kushner's company is in there. But there was a lot of foreign money, and that seemed to be a concern. Now, whether that was a matter of principle, right? Corporate executives having principles, sure. Yeah, probably not that, but it might have been a concern in terms of regulation for how many additional hurdles it creates to have that much foreign money involved in a buyout. Not insurmountable ones, but things that would stall the whole thing and or make it harder to get through and finalized during this administration. Regulations for mergers don't exist anymore. I legit mean that. Technically they do. They exist on paper. They have not been meaningfully enforced for about 20 years now. A bunch of economists, I believe out of Chicago, managed to convince political leaders in both parties that monopolies were a good thing and they should stop enforcing antitrust laws and regulations. And that's what's been happening. Regardless of which party is in power, antitrust, anti-monopoly, etc. regulations have been winding down their operations. This has been happening for decades. So Netflix's big advantage is Netflix was made an offer that was a lower total dollar amount on a per share basis, but was a higher percentage of cash. They were just flat out going to pay cash for most of their offer, and then the remaining offer was in Netflix stock. Cash is actually a really important thing in things like this. And it's not even just at the corporate level. Like when I was still married and we were trying to get our first house, we made an offer on the house and we lost it to someone else who didn't offer more money, didn't make a higher bid, but they offered a higher percentage of cash than we did. And cash wins in that situation. Cash can win even if your total that you are offering is slightly less. That's basically how Netflix won. Now, Paramount is currently making offers of, I believe, hang on, I have notes. Where'd I put it? $30 per share to the stockholders of Warner Brothers. And they're hoping that that offer of $30 per share will get enough people to sell them their stock so that they can get a majority and do the hostile takeover. Now, that is more money than the Netflix deal is going to get them, because the Netflix deal was $23.25 in cash and $4.50 in Netflix stock. Now, here's the thing. It's not just the percentage of cash. There's also going to be that stock rollover. What Paramount is offering is just straight up cash. We'll give you $30 for your shares. The Netflix deal says, here's mostly cash, but also here's some stock in the now larger, more expansive, and potentially far more profitable Netflix company. If this hostile takeover fails, I think it's going to be that. I think there's going to be a high enough percentage of the stockholders are going, okay, it's less cash to stick with the deal that's going through, but it also gives us stock in this newer, bigger, more impressive company, and that will continue paying even more after that. So long term, this will get me more than what I'm being offered to buy out 100% through Paramount. Hey, it's me from the edit. Just a really quick clarification on this. Netflix offered a higher percentage of cash than the bid that Paramount put in formally. And then when Warner Brothers went with Netflix's bid, this hostile takeover is an all-cash offer. So even though on paper now, well, isn't Paramount offering more cash? Yes, but it's in a desperation bid to try and claw back a deal that they lost. And it's a situation where a higher percentage of cash was to Netflix's advantage, but an all cash might be to Paramount's disadvantage because of the value of the stock and the new, larger Netflix. Let's talk about some of the specifics. I mentioned that there was a concern about foreign money and how that might be holding up regulation. That was probably a factor. This is almost pure speculation on my part, but you know what might also have been a factor? David Ellison might have just annoyed David Zaslav too much. Because the word is, he was basically coming in every 2 weeks with a revised offer and personally contacting Zaslav. There is such a thing as being too eager to buy. At a certain point, you come across as so desperate that the person you're selling to is either going to take you for way more than you should be paying, or they're going to go, all right, you are really creeping me the hell out with how badly you want this. I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened, but it is funny to me that he kept meeting with Zaslav every 2 weeks for 3 months, and Zaslav ghosted him. That's funny to me. So he moored into Zaslav enough that Zaslav wanted nothing to do with him. Babylon 5 reference for anyone who didn't catch that. Mr. Morden is sort of a temptation figure in that, always asking characters, what do you want? And being so persistent with that question that Zaslav just got Zaslav pulled a veer.
What do you want?
I'd like to live just long enough to be there when they cut off your head and stick it on a pike. I want to look up into your lifeless eyes and wave like this.
Nah, Zaslav doesn't deserve to be compared to Veer. Veer is awesome. We like Veer. Yeah, this. Paramount and Skydance clearly saw all the concerns online from all the people who were like, oh, it's going to be the death of cinema and all that. They clearly saw that, and so they made this pledge to release 30 films a year if they acquire Warner Brothers. Let's take a second to talk about why that is bullshit. I did go through both Warner Brothers and Paramount and how many movies they distributed in a year. I did not count absolutely everything. So some people, depending on what they choose to count or not count, might have slightly different numbers than me, but for my purposes, I looked at 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. I didn't look at 2021 because that was still impacted by the pandemic. And in the case of Warner Brothers, it doesn't help at all because that was the year where they released everything onto HBO Max at the same time. So I'm looking at 2022 through 2025, and I did not count anything that went direct to streaming, where they were handling distribution only in foreign markets, because honestly, this whole conversation of the death of cinemas is like, we're talking about in America. That's what people care about. If they actually stopped and thought about the death of cinema, no, cinema's doing actually much better in a lot of other places, but we don't care about that because we're selfish Americans. But anyways, from 2022 to 2025, by my count, Warner Brothers released an average of 13 films a year. Paramount in that same time frame released an average of 11. These two companies combined were releasing an average of 24 movies a year. And now the Ellisons and Skydance are claiming, we'll release over 30 films a year. Bullshit. Even these two corporations combined, they are still notably short of that. When was the last time you heard about a merger or a buyout where it increased their output, where it didn't immediately result in a bajillion layoffs and a rejiggering and a refocusing and a reduction? It's always a reduction. Price up, product down. That's what happens in these 30 films a year, you lying sack of. So let's talk about Trump real quick. Now, there is a lot of concern, partially because Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is in play in this. His company is one of the financing entities behind the Skydance bid. So obviously that gets them a direct in with Trump, which, first of all, is a classic case of corruption. You literally have the president's son-in-law getting involved in something that requires government approval. You remember when corruption was something that, yeah, happened, but they at least tried to avoid the appearance of impropriety? They so don't care anymore. The naked, flagrant corruption of this administration is, even to a cynic like me, mind-boggling. So there is concern from some people that this means Trump is going to come in, and Trump, as I said, has been nice with the Ellisons previously, and that he might put his finger on the scale. Now, the only thing that the government can actually put its finger on the scale on is the regulation side of it. Even if Trump could basically, wave his hand and say to his SEC and FCC and every other, pertinent government body, let it on through. That's assuming the hostile takeover even works, which again, big if. Even if he could do that, would he? Does he actually like Jared? I'm not sure he likes anybody, to be honest. But I don't just mean that as a straight up snarky thing. I mean, how much favoritism has he actually actively shown any of his kids? They pretty much all have to bank off his name, and he doesn't do anything about that. He lets them do it. He doesn't actually do all that much to actively help them in things. But more importantly, you remember how we talked about how CBS News was gutted in an attempt to appease Trump? This was part of the bid to ensure that the Skydance Paramount merger could happen. As was reported yesterday, Trump is lashing out at the Ellisons, who own Skydance and Paramount, mad because Marjorie Taylor Greene was allowed to appear on 60 Minutes to talk crap about him. So there's this idea that because the Ellisons are in good with Trump, he'll do them a solid. Trump doesn't do anybody a solid. Trump doesn't do anything to benefit anyone. Him being in a position of power in government, the most helpful thing he can do, and he frequently has done it, is to not stand in the way. But actively help them? No, he doesn't really. And he's currently now annoyed at them. And yes, as is noted in the chat, same thing happened with Musk. Now, did Musk still do a hell of a lot of damage and stuff to benefit him under Trump's approval and under his eye? Yeah, absolutely. But nobody stays friends with Trump. I mean, except that guy who owned that island that time. They stayed friends for a long time. But other than that guy, it would seem, nobody stays friends with Trump. That having been said, let's be very clear about why this would be bad. It would be bad for a litany of reasons. Again, just the Ellisons and their nonsense at this point, believe it or not, I actually know enough people who have ties to the industry that I actually have caught word that morale at Paramount is in the toilet. Nobody over there is happy. The ideas of these guys getting hold of literally anything else, much less Warner Brothers, is awful. But let's get real specific about that. Warner Brothers owns CNN. So Skydance has already attempted to kneecap CBS News and 60 Minutes in particular. They still managed to get Trump pissed off at them, but whatever. But yeah, CNN. Now, I don't think CNN is awesome or amazing, but CNN is a name that a lot of people trust. And it could be changed into a new Fox News real quick under Ellison ownership. Would Skydance kill Last Week Tonight with John Oliver? Not necessarily. I mean, they haven't killed The Daily Show yet. I think corporations want to have at least a slight appearance of not being 100% biased just to avoid boycotts and or pissing off too much of their customer base. Like, politicians don't really care about pissing off anyone other than their specific constituents who vote for them at this point. But corporations do have to be concerned about appearing so one-sided that they start to lose the people who aren't comfortable with that. Now, they can choose to lean into that. Fox News, prime example, and anybody to the right of them, they can lean into that. But if they're not going to commit to being outright right-wing, then it's probably in their best interest to not cancel stuff like The Daily Show, Or if the hostile takeover is successful, things like last week tonight. I don't think they're going to do that because the left's money spends just as well as the right. They're appealing to the right, again, partially because they think that's where the wind is blowing, and also it gets them on the good side of the people currently in government. Ultimately, these people are they have some specific political beliefs, but as entities, as corporate entities, they are politically agnostic. They will do what gets them money. And leftist money spends just as well as right wing, so they don't want to alienate them if they can help it. Yeah, you're talking faster than I'm used to. It's funny, sometimes when I'm editing, sometimes depending on how many notes I take, because most of my stuff is what I call semi-scripted. I come up with specific notes, bullet points, things I know that I want to hit. I'll have an outline, but I don't script the majority of videos that I put out. And as a result, a lot of times I have to trim out pauses where I pause to gather my thoughts. Tonight's stream was kind of the opposite, where I had a ton of thoughts and I wanted to be sure I could cram them all in because I was giving myself a hard cap of time. So yeah, I have been talking incredibly fast. If you ever hear me talking this fast, it's because my mouth is trying to keep up with my brain. Welcome to ADHD. ADD focus is a legit scary thing if you're between them and their target. Valid, John, that is incredibly valid. The joys of hyperfocus. Yeah. Hyperfocus can be wielded for good. But speaking from my side of that equation, it's draining. Oh God, that's another thing I didn't even bring up. I'm going to be really curious regardless of who takes control. I will be really curious to see what they do with the video game division, because neither Netflix nor Paramount have a dedicated video game division in-house. So yeah, that would be real interesting. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for putting up with my exceptionally speedily run through discussion of all this. But I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. I hope the holiday season is treating you well so far. Be well, be safe, be kind. And please remember that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Mystic Shadow, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and shout-outs to some random folks from the lower tiers. Thanks to Callum Ray, 3 Muppets in a Trench Coat, and Alex Fireheart. If you want to hear me thank you by name, you can check out the reward tiers on the Patreon. You guys were pretty good today. Thank you.